Hey, you guys, and welcome back. One of the things that I want to do so far as taking this channel in a new direction is I want to focus more in depth concerning the history of Black women in this country. Most of the time when we hear about the history of Black people in this country is mainly focused on Black men. And I remember reading an article about some things that happened, and some of those articles I'm going to be sharing with you on this channel, as well as some of the books that I've gotten and read concerning our history here in this country. But one of the articles that I read said that you really don't hear as many accounts from Black women because historians just never thought to even ask the women, which caused a lot of sadness for me, because when you think about our foremothers and you think about everything that they went through, it's like they went through all of that at the hands of pretty much everybody because, yes, it was, of course, racist white people, but it was also Black men, right? So basically being prey to everybody surrounding you, not really having a soft place to land at all. And then to add insult to injury, people just go on and act like it's not happening, right? They just treat you like you're invisible, except for the fact of when they want to abuse you or mistreat you. And so doing this and going in this new direction, what I am hoping for is to bring awareness to Black women that it's not just the Black men who have suffered. It's also the Black women as well, because I think that because we only hear about the men, most Black women feel like Black women had it a lot easier. And in reading some of these accounts, one of the things that keeps coming up from our foremothers is many of them just simply wished for death, right? They just simply wished for death, and in an even more heart-wrenching, complex expression of love, many times they also wished for death for their children. Because rather than to see them, going through everyday torture and torment at the hands of whoever felt like torturing or tormenting them, they as their mothers, when they got to keep or stay close to their children, had to witness it and see it and know that they could do absolutely nothing. Or even, and I don't even know if this is worse or better or, the same, but having your child, your newborn baby, ripped from your breast, ripped from your arms and sold off, and you never see them again. And so you always have this thought in your mind, are they okay? Are they still alive? Are they calling out for me? Just, torture and torment on top of torture and torment. Another recurring theme that I keep seeing in these accounts is many of the women often said and believed that it was worse for the women than it was for the men. Even though they recognized what was going on with the men, the women, our foremothers that were living in that time, felt like and believed that it was worse for the women. And so it brought them great sadness when they would have a little girl, just thinking about what she would have to endure as she goes throughout her life and as she starts to develop and become a young woman. And so those are the types of things that we're going to be focusing on this channel. And I wanted to do this because to me it just seems so insulting and offensive and disrespectful to the memories of our foremothers that we only talk about the men, that we only speak about the men. And it's almost like all of that torture and torment and the things that our foremothers went through is almost like it never happened. Right? It's almost like they even didn't exist. And to not acknowledge the things that happened to our foremothers is really a great disrespect to their memory. Right? Could you imagine somebody or everyone around you being able to brutalize you for whatever reason, and then everybody just go on about life and act like it wasn't happening, like act like it's normal, act like it's to be expected. You shouldn't be talking about it because that's what we're supposed to do to these women. And so when I start to share some of the articles with you, then you'll see that it wasn't just white people. It was also Black men as well. It wasn't just white people covering it up. You also had help from Black men to help white people to cover up the things that they did to Black women. So that's kind of like in the future what we're going to be getting into. But for today's video, I'm going to play you some audio. I'm hoping that I'll be able to play it. I'm hoping that YouTube will allow it to stay up. If it doesn't allow it to stay up, I'm going to put a link down in the description box and you can go over to the video and watch it. But I'm going to play the audio here because I want to pinpoint something and I want to give you a trigger warning. Okay, the audio is of an older black woman who is pleading for her life to hospital officials and to the police. Okay, this happened about 4 years ago. And so I'm going to insert that here, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to tell you why this is important to bring up at this particular time.
Help me! I can't breathe.
These are the desperate pleas of 57-year-old Barbara Dawson.
Please put your hands down.
All recorded on police dash cam video. Now many want to know how these cries for help could have been ignored, with tragic consequences. Last December, Barbara Dawson was admitted to Calhoun Liberty Hospital in Blountstown, Florida for abdominal pains. Several hours later, she was discharged, but still complained of shortness of breath. Dawson refused to leave, and then hospital workers called the cops to have her removed from the premises. Officer John Tadlock responded to the call.
You need to leave my room and get on out of here, because see, I'm ready feeling sick.
A few minutes later, Officer Tadlock removed Dawson's oxygen hose.
Let's take this off.
You can't take that off.
I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, ma'am.
You don't leave me alone. Leave me alone. I can't even breathe.
Officer Tadlock proceeded to arrest Dawson for disorderly conduct and trespassing.
Wait!
Dawson, please put your hands behind your back. Please stop.
I can't breathe.
You seem to be breathing okay right
No,
now.
I can't.
Let's go.
Help me. Y'all help me. Help me. Oh, I can't breathe.
Once outside, things went from bad to disastrous. Barbara Dawson collapsed and fell to the ground. Officer Tadlock didn't seem to be buying it.
Can't stop falling down like this and laying down. That's not going to stop you from going to jail.
Hospital staff didn't seem to believe Dawson either.
Miss Dawson, get up. There's nothing wrong with you.
But the doctor who discharged her came out to assess the situation.
This is totally different than what she was when I was discharging her.
20 more minutes passed. Dawson was returned on a stretcher.
She's just dead weight.
Tragically, just an hour after the ordeal began, Barbara Dawson died of a blood clot in her lungs. Officer John Tadlock was cleared of any wrongdoing in the death of Barbara Dawson. He has since resigned. And 3 hospital staffers have been fired for their handling of Dawson's care. But it's no consolation for Barbara Dawson's family. They are outraged and have vowed to not go down without a fight.
Okay, so now the reason why I wanted you to hear that is because this morning when I woke up, I saw an article where our current president has put in a rule concerning the discrimination of the healthcare system against transgender people. And I'm going to read you a little bit of that, and I'm going to include the link to the story down in the description box so you can read the rest of it for yourself. It says, the Biden administration just issued a rule protecting transgender folks from healthcare discrimination. Going to the doctor can be an intensely vulnerable and stressful experience for anyone. Now, imagine you went in for an appointment only for a doctor to refuse you proper care or make comments that left you feeling unwelcome or like you couldn't trust them with your health. That's the reality for a lot of transgender and LGBTQ plus folks. And in parentheses it says, and people of color for that matter. And especially so during the last presidential administration. Thankfully, a new policy from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services took a major step to change that. On Monday, the Biden administration announced that transgender and other LGBTQ plus people are now protected against healthcare discrimination, effective immediately. This relief comes a year after a Trump-era rule defined sex as the biological sex and gender assigned at birth, meaning that hospitals, doctors, and insurance companies could deny adequate care to transgender people. Because, reminder, trans folks often identify with a gender other than their original sex at birth. In the new policy, the HHS clarifies that the Affordable Care Act, Section 1557, bans intolerance or discrimination based on race, color, national origin, sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, age or disability, and covered health programs or activities. This was first instated in 2016 by the Obama administration, but the changes under Trump in 2020 significantly limited the scope of protections by defining sex as limited to the biological sex and gender assigned at birth. This new change from the HHS is backed up by a landmark 6-3 Supreme Court decision, Bostock versus Clayton County, made in June 2020, which ruled that LGBTQ people are federally protected against job discrimination on the basis of their gender identity and sexual orientation. The HHS says this decision also applies to health care, which led to the redefining of Section 1557. The Supreme Court has made clear that people have a right not to be discriminated against on the basis of sex and receive equal treatment under the law, no matter their gender identity or sexual orientation. Fear of discrimination can lead individuals to forego care, which can have serious negative health consequences. For example, in a 2014 survey conducted by Lambda Legal, which is an LGBTQ plus legal and advocacy organization, 70% of trans and gender nonconforming respondents reported instances of providers denying care, using harsh language, or blaming their sexual orientation or gender identity as the cause of an illness, and 56% of lesbian, gay, and bisexual respondents reported the same. Policies and laws that limit gender-affirming care can quite literally pose a threat to the well-being and even the safety of transgender people. And this is a quote by Anne Marie O'Melia, Chief Medical Officer of Pathlight Mood and Anxiety Center in Towson, Maryland. She goes on to say, the state of the science, as evidenced by consensus expert opinions and emerging research, says that we should be expanding gender-affirming surgeries, not limiting them. Not all transgender people need or want surgery, but we know that gender-affirming surgery is associated with alleviating suffering for those who do want it and are able to choose it. It says, after the announcement, President Biden tweeted, "No one should ever be denied access to health care because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. That's why today we announced new protections from healthcare discrimination. To every LGBTQ plus American out there, I want you to know the president has your back. Supporting LGBTQ plus folks is one of the Biden administration's promises and is outlined in their Equality Act, a bill that aims to provide consistent and explicit anti-discrimination protections for LGBTQ plus people across key areas including employment, housing, credit, education, public spaces and services, federally funded programs, and jury service, according to the Human Rights Campaign. If passed, the Equality Act would amend the 1964 Civil Rights Act to include the prevention of discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity." So, Black women, you heard that, and hopefully you either heard the audio or you went and viewed the link in the description box concerning what happened to Ms. Dawson when she needed help. She wasn't going to help from Pookie on the street corner or some street thug. She was going to medical professionals, and they called the police on her, and as she lay there dying, they were, harassing her and threatening her, and she, at one point in time, was just already gone, pretty much. And so I want you to think about how many stories you have heard about Black women either dying or almost dying or being placed in serious health conditions when they have not been listened to by healthcare professionals. And I want you to think about all of the conversation that has been going on the internet and everywhere concerning the treatment of Black women and concerning the fact that so-called professionals in all facets of this country refuse to listen to Black women when they speak, refuse to acknowledge Black women when they say that they are hurting, right? And one of the things that I've noticed ever since this new administration has come in is that Black women have been attacked pretty much by everyone, including transgender Black women. that was one of the things that pushed me to come back to start making videos in speaking out about this, is because of, the amount of hatred that I've seen spewed in the direction of biological black women. Not only heterosexual black men, but gay black men and transgender black women who are born biologically male. And so that's why I kind of highlighted the part in there where it talked about, public spaces, because one of the things that they're really wanting to do in pushing this Equality Act bill is to be able to allow transgender women who are born biologically male into biological women's spaces. You don't want to wait until these bills and things pass to start thinking about what you're going to do as a response, or what you're going to do to try to keep this from taking place. Now, I want to say something because the thing about it is, what you choose to do in your life is what you choose to do. If you want to be gay, that's your business. If you want to put on a wig and a dress and be, dress up as a woman, that's your business. The only problem that I have is when your rights usurp mine, where I say, hey, I'm concerned about this, I'm fearful about this, and the elected officials ignore the pleas of the women because the men who have decided to turn into women are taking precedent and are overruling the voices of women. We already know as black women that we aren't listened to. So can you imagine if these bills pass? Because it's not just that bill. There's one that is, I forgot, it's the Something Women's Act. And in that bill, they also include transgender women in with biological women. And so I implore black women to not just sit around and wait and see what's going to happen, especially because I know many black women and many women in general, many even, white women are speaking about these things in their own spaces. They're not necessarily that vocal, but they're speaking about these things and they're saying that they don't, want this to take place, but no one is listening to the women. And so with black women, I don't want you to sleep on this. I want you to think about what would be your response if this passes and begins to impact you and your daughters and your female family members. And as you know, as I've been saying on this channel, regardless of who it is, whether it's a black man or racist white people or whatever, if someone is doing something to harm you, you most definitely should not be supporting them. I voted Democrat for a very long time. Even having said that, there's something different about this administration, because all of the people who the Biden administration is helping and assisting is a group that has been known to be racist towards black people, especially the black women. Asian Americans, you see videos all the time of them beating and choking and stomping black women. I believe in that, and I tried to find it. There was an article that came out when they first passed the anti-Asian hate bill that said that they were going to be allocating so many funds to domestic violence resources. Think about the amount of domestic violence and domestic homicide and sexual assault that happens in the black community to black women. Think about that. Think about how long that has been going on. That's one of the reasons why I want to start talking about the things that happened to our foremothers, because everyone has tried to cover that up, including black men. Black men helped to cover up what was happening to black women and black girls at the hands of white men. They helped them. And so that's one of the reasons why I want us to start having these conversations. Unlike what you have heard from black people who have joined the Republican Party, I am not proposing that you automatically just jump over and join the Republican Party. My suggestion is for you to be neutral. My suggestion for you is to move over to the Independent Party and wait for a candidate who is going to call out your name the same way the Biden administration has called out Asian Americans. They've called out transgender. They've called out LGBTQ plus community. They've called out immigrants. They've even called out Armenians. I didn't even know we had an Armenian community in this country. But you even saw where he called out Turkey, like for something that happened like years and ages ago. And you sit up here it seems like every day we see a black woman and black kids being killed every single day. We're hearing this. When you go to try to find stats concerning the homicide for black women, you know what comes up? Transgender women. Transgender black women is what comes up. If you were to listen to the people talking about the homicides that are taking place with transgender black women, you would think that they were getting killed, 2 or 3, per day. Biological black women are being killed in the hundreds. Hundreds of them are being killed. At least once a day, a black woman is getting killed. A biological black woman is getting killed. And this has been happening forever. And to me, just the level of disrespect to completely ignore the group that came out in full force to support this current president's presidency, and to have them be completely ignored and have all of these other groups called out and say, oh, well, you don't need to be discriminated, so forth, healthcare. And you have black women dying every day because they just won't listen to them, like you heard in the audio. She said that she couldn't breathe 4 years before George Floyd. I remember this story. When I first heard it, I couldn't get it out of my mind hearing her. I'm thinking to myself how that feels to be sitting there knowing something is wrong and knowing you could be potentially be dying and thinking about your kids and your grandkids and how you ain't gonna get to see them again. And it doesn't have to be that way. All I got to do is just get these people to listen to me, and them just ignoring you and just not caring nothing for your life. Nothing for your life. That stuck with me when I first saw that video, when I first heard about that story, and then it stayed with me when I became caregiver for some of my family members, and how I had to fight to be heard. The things that my family members went through because the medical professionals wouldn't listen to me. It is heartbreaking. It's unnecessary stress that the person who is trying to do everything that they can to take care of their loved one has to endure just because of what they look like. And then you have this administration to come in and call out everybody's name. When you had black women going around doing all these there were black women doing letter writing campaigns to write to people to encourage them to vote, going door to door. It's just disrespectful and demeaning and insulting. And what I was going to say before I cut it off and went off on a different tangent is that you can't wait until a couple weeks before election day and say, hey, everybody, all black folks, we need to get together and do X, Y, Z. We need to start having these conversations well before election day hits, because everybody's not going to hear you. Everybody's not going to get the message when you just got 2 weeks to go. Because people are going to be working and busy and doing this and that. The time to be, as I said in my video that I did a couple weeks ago, the time to be thinking about those things is now. The time to be paying attention to what they're saying and doing is now. The time to be thinking about what you're going to be doing if XYZ happens. What are you going to do if the Equality Act passes? What are you going to do when the woman's whatever act that they have coming out where they're trying to include men in dresses in with biological women? What are you going to do? What is going to be your response? Those are things that we need to be thinking about now, because trust and believe there will be consequences, especially in our community, where any and everything is allowed to happen to black women, and no one says anything, and black women don't say anything other than mutterings, amongst themselves on the internet. And the thing that I want black women, and I'm going to repeat this again because I know most people don't stick it out to the end, but the thing that I want black women to notice is that from these groups that are getting tangible things from this administration, laws being passed, resources allocated to those, laws and bills and all that stuff, they'll make mention. They'll say, oh, well, you need to stop anti-Asian hate. You also need to stop anti-black hate and this, that, and the third. Like, they'll stand up for things that are symbolic when it comes to us, but they're actually getting tangible resources. They'll give lip service to us so that they can come back to us and say, well, see, we fought for you. We spoke up for you, yada, yada, yada. But that's only symbolic stuff. Stop. Oh, you shouldn't say this about black people. You shouldn't say that. But there's nothing tangible associated with that. They are getting tangibles. They are getting resources. They are getting legislation passed. And then they're giving us the little honorable mention symbolic crap just to say, oh, yeah, well, we stood up for you and we fought for you. even in the article that I read you, it mentions, yeah, well, oh yeah, people of color, they have discrimination in the medical and the healthcare field too. And then it goes on to talk about, what's going on with transgender people. You have a pandemic going on where black people are saying, hey, we don't really trust the medical field and the healthcare field, and we don't really trust them because of all the stuff that they've done to us. And for some reason, they only think that it's the Tuskegee experiment. They act like it's not ongoing. They act like there isn't discrimination and issues to where medical and healthcare professionals are listening to black people, especially black women, when they tell them, hey, something is wrong. But they keep pushing the vaccine and vaccine and vaccine, but they won't address the underlying issue of the healthcare system is discriminatory towards us. They will not address that, but they'll address it for transgender and LGBTQ+. So our current president made it a point to go out of his way, him and the vice president, to go out of their way to be supportive of Asian Americans, LGBTQ+, immigrants, Armenians. And if those groups are represented in this country and those groups supporting him, I understand that completely. But what about the group that has been supporting the Democratic Party for all of this long time? What about the biggest chunk of votes for any one particular group received by, this current administration? And so my call to black women is that if those are the groups that they are going to support, him and Kamala, that's fine. But when it comes time for re-election, if black women's names haven't been called, then black women need to step back and let those groups whose names have been called get out and vote and get them put back in office. If things continue the way they're going right now, then this current administration has not earned the black woman vote. And so I'm going to end this video on that note. So if you want to hear more, if you're interested in hearing more, please click on the notification bell so that you'll know when I've uploaded another video. If you haven't subscribed, please go ahead and subscribe. I will be so happy to have you. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. You guys have a great day, and I will see you on the next video. Thanks.